I mean, the good thing is this is one of the first times actually that sort of the rigors of the healthcare system as a whole are being put into the public eye, and people are able to like doctors are able to hear from other people like, hey, this is not normal, your life is fucking crazy.
So why don't you give me a quick little background to what it is you do and why you've come to the wonderful world of Twitch to spread the gospel?
Yeah, so I'm DocMidnight. I was in a unique position where I finished med school, and I was just about to start a residency in July. And then all of a sudden I got a phone call and I was like, oh no, we need you to come in immediately. It was sort of like a war happened, right? They're like, hey, this is not your specialty anymore that you chose, but we need you to come into the hospital immediately and start tomorrow. So I am now an intern in anesthesiology and critical care, and I have been since March. I've been working with COVID patients like almost 80 to 100 hours a week since then.
Wow.
Yeah, and from that period of time, I've seen a lot of questionable things that have occurred as a result of the politicization of the virus. Which is namely why I'm anonymous, because I think these are things people deserve to know, especially that we're like a part of a for-profit healthcare system, right? And the way I see it, hey, if we have a for-profit healthcare system where people are customers of the system, then as customers, I believe they deserve to know everything they can, everything I can tell them so that they can make informed decisions about their care. Right, and COVID changed a lot of things and unveiled a lot of things, and I'm happy to talk about them with you today. In addition,
I was going to say, is this a little bit like a whistleblower thing too?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Completely.
Oh my. All right.
Yeah, and yes, I'm happy to go into that. In addition, I've been part of the coronavirus research task force since March. I'm one of the co-writers of the John Snow Memorandum. I have 8+ years of experience in clinical research. I have a graduate degree in immunology. I've taught undergrad classes galore. So yeah, that's my background.
So for all the credentialists in the audience, you have been vetted. Let's just say that. Yeah, like that's fancy speak, everyone. For I knows my shit. All right, that's all I'm going to say about that. But very impressive. That's quite a resume.
Thank you.
Okay, so why don't we start with the most revealing things? I know you just said that it's as a disease has revealed a lot of things to society. Do you mean things beyond just the class stratification? The fact that this clearly is disproportionately affecting Black, Indigenous, minorities as opposed to people who are more well off or who aren't frontline workers, for example.
Yeah, way beyond that. I mean, for one, those communities you first and foremost mentioned have been completely ignored, as is expected, right? In terms of how it usually is. I mean, one of the things that I've been doing with that I tell people I do with the money I get from streaming is buying PPE for like the local homeless community, indigenous and immigrant and low income communities where I am. And I actually dropped off my first box of PPE this past weekend, and it was at like a homeless encampment, and they were basically telling me, hey, we've been dying and putting the bodies of our fellow homeless people in garbage, in the garbage, because we have no idea where else to put them. We reuse masks that people throw out because we have no aid from any type of government from this whole time. And I even bought toilet paper for them because for once this was like actually something like masks, toilet paper, and hand sanitizer and things like that this large population that goes largely ignored has been completely without access to since March.
That's just horrifying. I just don't. Yeah, I don't really have other words for it.
And like the hospital I work at, it's a private hospital, so we have like a quota for the amount of the homeless population or the uninsured population that we can treat. And once that quota is reached,
is that like a pro bono thing? Like this is what you set aside?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because essentially, if someone goes into the hospital and receives care and they don't have insurance, right, and they're not able to pay for it, then it's seeing a patient at a loss, right, to the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah, and
in a for-profit system, I guess that's how it would work. Yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that is how it works currently. So then a lot of patients that we can't treat anymore since we've reached that quota a while ago, we just send to the other hospitals, some of them a couple hours away. That's one of the, that's just like what touching upon everything that's happened. Like the stuff I was whistleblowing about, from the months of like March to July, August, we were all as a whole entire healthcare system using like one set of PPE all of those months. They were telling us, hey, you can use UV to disinfect it, right? So it's fine.
Wait, you had to share the same one?
No, we all were issued one set of PPE in March, and we were all using it all the way up till July, August.
Wow.
I mean, even now we still use one set once every 2 weeks or once every week.
You're gonna have to pardon my ignorance on this topic. Being from the fake land of Canada and everything. But how does the system work in terms of, like, was that based on availability, or if you have this for-profit hospital? Is that just how they prioritize their gear or their employees, or how does that work?
It's multifaceted, right? So on one hand, it was about prioritization. A lot of, like, more particularly where I work, as soon as the pandemic started, all the PPE we did have was sort of put under lock and key, and it was given like preferentially out to people who, like, were in higher, like, sort of political standing within the hospital system. People that other people liked more, essentially.
Wow.
But at the same time, I have a source who's like in the military.
Okay.
And he works on a base and found like a whole sort of container full of like 400,000 N95s that have just been sitting there collecting dust.
That's incredible.
So at the same time, that's happening too.
But no, was he able to redistribute it to you and the rest of the workers?
No.
Oh,
no,
sorry.
No,
okay. That's why I was like, that's incredible. I thought that was like a heartening story at the end of all this horror.
No.
He discovered all these thousands of masks, and then now we all have them now, and we're
just
great.
just sitting in a fucking military base.
Good. Okay, well that's
collecting dust since March. I found out about this last month.
Jesus. All right. Well, I'm gonna temper how I conduct this, because clearly it sounds like everything is just horrifying and morbid. And how does the rest of the staff? I mean, people often think, like, if you're the hospital staff, your doctors, your nurses, nurses, they're incredibly hard workers, no question about it, but they're also very well compensated for that, right? So there's this idea that if this was to go down, that you wouldn't be the ones who were worried about whether or not you would have a mask, for example. Sorry.
You mean so? So in the U.S., a very small percentage of the hospitals have been providing, their faculty and staff with any form of hazard pay. We have not gotten any hazard pay, and in fact, where I work, they threw us a pizza party telling us that they met and were determined they're not giving us hazard pay.
But thanks for the pizza. I mean, that's gotta wash down this fucking gross inequity. Sure.
I mean, residents like us have been extremely screwed over because we've been working 100+ hours outside of our required hours, and we're salaried, so those hours aren't logged. And the last I calculated my salary, which is like $55,000 a year, I actually get paid about $10 an hour, $11 an hour.
And
considering
I'm
the hours
you
I work.
Have obscene student debt on top of that.
Yeah, I'm $350,000 in debt.
All right, that's the part of all this that I'm pretty well aware of, because I've had a lot of friends who've gone to the U.S. for for their medical degrees, and yeah, $350,000. And
yeah, med school is like $70,000 a year.
And then does the idea then be that like you do this? I mean, I assume you're not always, sorry, this is a little off topic, but I assume you're not always going to be in a situation in which you're just making like $10 an hour as it breaks down. Like you climb the seniority ladder, you eventually you become one of the petit bourgeois, right? Like that's the dream, or at least that's what you're sold.
That's what we're sold, but it's not what medicine is anymore, and it hasn't been like that anymore for the past 20, 30 years.
And what's the reality?
I mean, the reality is I'm in my residency for 6 years, basically. All 6 years I'll be making this salary with the potential for like incremental $2,000 increase each year. Each year I continue doing it.
So even doctors are getting fucked over.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge misconception that doctors make like obscene amounts of money anymore. I mean, after I do finish, right? And I have no idea what's happening with my residency, by the way. So, like, let's say hypothetically, right, I finish as a critical care intensivist and anesthesiologist, which was not my original intended specialty anyway. I would have a base salary of about like, 200,000 after my residency. But that has no potential for increase. That's just like my whole life, which is an amazing salary. I do understand, but I think the biggest misconception is doctors are making like $1 million a year.
I've always had the idea that they make upwards of 100 plus, but I didn't think it went higher than say 300. You have to become highly specialized to be able to reach those kind of heights. But it sounds a lot more, and I know we're derailing from COVID here, but it sounds a lot more as if it's like the current state of the medical system in the United States, and I don't know if this is replicated in Canada as well, even under a public one, is that it is a lot more like grunt workers doing arduous and very difficult hours and jobs and not receiving the compensation that they're probably not only owed, but deserve.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, I don't feel like I deserve anything more than, the nurses I've worked with. I don't feel like I deserve anything more than like the, environmental services team, right? I just feel like, if I just feel like because I live in fear every day, we all live in fear every day going into work. I feel like at the very least, if we die of COVID, we deserve like something to be able to, give to our families.
I can't even begin to imagine what it's been like for you just having seen like the politicization of this and like how everything just kind of grew and manifested. Like I'm gonna excuse myself for saying the pun like a disease, but like all the way up from anti-maskers to people thinking that people who are working in hospitals are lying about death rates or lying about comorbidity factors and stuff like that. It must be astonishing, especially given the situation that you're describing.
So I think what's even worse, Lance, is that at least in America, one thing that I say to a lot of people is like, hey, it doesn't matter anymore, whether you work in like a red or blue state, right? It matters whether you work in a right or left leaning hospital.
Really?
I work at a right leaning hospital, right? So during this whole time, we completely stopped temperature checks around June and symptom checks for our staff and faculty.
Why?
And they created a system to self-report your symptoms, which, people are scared they'll lose their jobs, right? So they self-report whatever they report. During this whole time, it wasn't until this month, actually, we've canceled elective surgeries, despite like every single doctor in the hospital yelling at our administration to do so.
Jesus.
Where I work, pretty much, maybe 10% of the whole entire hospital staff and faculty have been tested. I'm talking about like once since March.
Like, yeah, sorry, I'm slightly speechless. Like, I had no idea things were that bad on the front lines. It's like the horrors of a for-profit system just pushed to its extremes, and y'all.
Well, yeah.
You're being used like chum, like cannon fodder in the middle of it all.
Well, the kicker is I don't know if you followed the news at Stanford University and Washington University, St. Louis. The kicker is 2 weeks ago, right? We were told, hey, we're getting vaccines now from the federal government. You're going to get your vaccines this week, right?
Okay.
And then last week, all of our hospital systems, I'm amongst a few of those mentioned, gave all of the vaccines to hospital administration that have been working from home since March.
To the administration.
And yeah, I wish I was kidding, Lance. And on Monday, yesterday, right, they sent out an email now saying, "Hey, we're sorry. We don't know when you will have access to the vaccine."
Like this is like cartoon supervillainy, like something I'd expect out of like the Joker to do or something like that, where it's just like well first the CEOs need to be safe, so we're gonna wait till they get all of them. It's like, well, is there any vaccine left? It's like, oh no, not for you doctors and nurses, but next time we'll get you on the next one, we promise.
Yeah, and if you follow what happened at Stanford, they just held a mass protest, like doctors, nurses, everyone, and the only thing that the Stanford administration did was say like, hey, we're sorry. We're sorry, we're blaming the algorithm for this, but unfortunately we've given all the vaccines to the administration. So
that's absolutely insane. Well, I do not blame you for wanting to get the word out on all this, because like some of this, I see people in my chat are already like, oh yeah, Lance, this is normal, but a lot of people are just astounded as I am to hear how bad it is.
Yeah.
When you say left-leaning hospitals, though, what like do those?
So
exist?
I'm talking about like the political affiliations of the hospital administration, because the hospital administration control our lives, basically.
Okay.
How many people work in the administration?
Well, no, I've heard of such things. Is it a myth? Is there an oasis? Like, where's the left-leaning hospital? Where would people practice? Is there a lot of them? I imagine it's got to be difficult to come across.
Yeah, it's like finding like a rare Pokemon. being able to work at like a left-leaning hospital. Yeah. I mean, the CEO of my hospital completely refused to wear a mask walking around in the hospital, and like made public statements saying, hey, it's not a big deal. Right. So
and did they catch COVID?
Oh, not yet, but they will.
Yeah.
They probably will. I mean,
so I guess my first question would be, well, I guess here, just off the gate, what could people do to help? At the very least, because I know people don't have army supplies of N95s in their back rooms, for example, and I know the best thing I can probably do is get this out, so I'll try to make a lot of noise about this, but for the average person watching.
So I'm glad like my answer to this question has been much more developed the more I've learned about politics myself being on Twitch. I think the best thing people can do are essential workers outside of healthcare need to go on strike for us. We can't go on strike. We can't sacrifice, the lives of patients to go on strike. We also can't go on strike because a lot of us, including me, right, have it written in our contracts that if we do anything related to unions, we're gone.
Yeah.
And we need essential workers to go on strike for us. Yeah.
That's so true. I never even thought about that. Like you cannot strike. No. People's lives hang in the balance. That is so true. You don't even have that privilege to try and strike and unionize. So
yeah, people, they know that.
Yeah, no, of course. That's leverage against you.
Right, like they know none of us will sacrifice even like 10 seconds of not treating patients to do a strike,
What is it like dealing with patients who don't believe COVID exists or stuff of that nature?
So I would say a good like 40% of my patients that I've, that have died under my care have died not believing COVID is real.
40%?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that's anecdotal to where I work, but unfortunately that's, the case.
Like what do they think is happening?
Well, so it goes as far as like my hospital dealing with like probably more than 10 lawsuits now against us because their family members who have survived them are suing us because we're treating them for a disease that doesn't exist.
What?
Like, yeah. And I've had one singular patient that like I will always remember. He was sort of like a far right wing COVID denier that got COVID, that got admitted to the ICU. He didn't have to be mechanically ventilated yet. So what he chose to do with this time that he, was a little stronger was to overnight when like things are a little more lax, he would go around and try to unplug people's dialysis machines and ventilators. So we had to call in security to tie him down. And he survived. He survived.
Oh my God. Yeah. I hope criminal charges were pressed against that.
I have no idea. I didn't follow up on it.
Wow.
But
that is just, yeah, mind boggling. What, like, do you feel that the war is being lost in terms of like information on COVID? Because I'd like to think that even Trump at his absolute worst eventually kowtow to the idea that like you should wear masks, right? Like that final press conference he finally gave was that, by the way, this is real, like,
yeah, but it's like too little too late, right?
No, absolutely.
Because I almost can't feel any type of way about the people that I just described believing that, because if you put it this way, they're the type of people that have like the utmost trust absolutely in the federal government, right? So if the federal government itself is spreading misinformation, right, you can't I completely understand why then people who have utmost faith like that would believe it, would undoubtedly believe it, right? And I think that's perhaps the biggest problem. The number one problem in America is our culture. The number two problem is the misinformation spread by our own federal government, as well as the dismantling of basically any other process in our federal government to address misinformation, including but not limited to, right, completely stopping the COVID press update conferences. Yeah. Right after like 3 conferences.
Yeah.
Leaving the WHO, which was a disaster, right? Because doctors and scientists rely on WHO data, especially for a pandemic. Dismantling the CDC, like hobbling it to the point that it basically is useless right now. In addition to like spreading the misinformation of hydroxychloroquine. Right, spreading the misinformation that, hey, it'll be over in May, it'll be over in June, it'll be over in July, it'll be over in August, right? Like, it's unreal to us that is something that, like, if you asked me 5 years ago, I would never have predicted our federal government would actually go as far as to spread misinformation regarding a pandemic.
Yeah. And like,
right.
even information that most people with a cursory understanding of the subject matter would be like, well, that's not right. Like I don't drink bleach. Like that's not going to fix anything.
Well, Lance, we had 15 patients die from drinking bleach in my health system alone. Like,
what?
Yeah, people. That's the problem. People listen to him.
The fuck? Oh man. Yeah, I don't know what else to say except I'm sorry. It's like, can't believe it. I'm talking to a doctor. Your life sounds like it's been fucking horrifying beyond belief. Well, on top of everything else, you know? And like,
because on top of everything else, on top of everything else, right? This whole entire time, I've had coworkers become patients after treating it for the whole time. 3 weeks ago, I had 3 doctors pass away, right? In between the doctors passing away and the nurses leaving and the doctors leaving, about 12, 15 of my coworkers have committed suicide since March. The people that have not committed suicide.
That's fucking horrible.
Oh, yeah, it's all good. The people that have not committed suicide, right? They've all completely resorted to alcohol, drugs, caffeine pill abuse. Like I've resorted to caffeine pill abuse because I don't want to abuse alcohol. Because if we want mental health where I work, you need to pay for the $300 a month level of employee health care insurance to have your mental health care covered.
You gotta be fucking me on top of
Right.
everything else.
Otherwise, your copay is $100. Yeah.
Like,
And that's for like the second level of it.
none of this is sustainable. Even from like the owner's perspective, like the administrators, like they must realize, like, if you just grind people into pulp, then you can't make money in 10 years. Like, there's going to be no staff left.
Well, it's because we're replaceable.
No.
You know, like one thing that always stuck with me is so I attended like a virtual funeral last week of one of those coworkers, and it was like a funeral sort of like conducted by the hospital, right? And the whole entire eulogy was about, hey, Dr. blah 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 contributed X amount of time, X amount of energy, discovered all these things, treated all these patients. Thank you so much for your service, blah, blah, blah. Right. And at the same time, right, in the back of my head, I couldn't stop thinking about, well, hey, he's gone and the hospital's still functioning. And it's almost like he was never there because they just announced who would replace him. Yeah. Right. I'm sorry, but like, doctors are not on the top of the hierarchy and top of the food chain in hospitals. I think that's a big misconception that the media, like Hollywood and those TV shows, like portray, right?
Like you're all beholden to the administrators, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How does this work from a hierarchical perspective? Like how does everything come on from on high to basically, like, do you think that they're doing everything they're doing? The bottom line is just profit, or is there some level of humanity to any of this in which, like, we are basically the last lifeline for a lot of Americans?
In a lot of hospitals, there is some semblance of humanity. I just happen to work for a particularly bad one.
Okay.
But if you work in a particularly bad one, right, it is pretty much all profit. I mean, even outside of like my specialty of anesthesiology and like let's say like urology or something, right? In a lot of the types of hospitals I work at, they'll basically use the highest amount of things possible to reach the end goal. Like, let's say someone's diagnosed with like bladder cancer, right? And it's like bladder cancer that hasn't metastasized, that can, easily be treated with a minor, partial cystectomy, which is removal of the bladder or something, right? Mm-hmm. Even though they have determined that, they would still have the patient go through an X amount of chemotherapy or a radiation therapy or a combination of that in order to get to that same end goal of needing surgery, even though they could basically just do surgery in the next month. So, in our healthcare system, if you're dealing with the worst case scenario, you basically have like a price tag as soon as you're born. That's like a rolling price tag where
that's such a dark way of looking at life, but that's pretty much how it's organized.
Yeah, because like doctors don't have a choice in practices such as like, hey, if you need your medication refilled, you need to come for a visit first, even though you've already been to the doctor's like a week or two ago. Mm-hmm. Right. Like we have really meticulous standards of care for every single specialty, for every single disease that we have to follow. And
could I quickly ask maybe some COVID related questions? Because knowing now what I know about the absolute horrors and atrocities of the way the hospitals are treating their own staff, it might put into light some of the things that I've been thinking of since the start. I guess one of the first ones being the concept of herd immunity, which keeps getting pushed by
Oh my fucking god! Sorry, I don't mean to curse, by the way.
Yeah, please no curse. Holy shit, curse!
Yeah.
You have earned 1,000,000 curses, my friend. if I was you, I would have ventured like, holy fucking shit, Christ! Like, I gotta talk to you, Lance. I'm like, hey, yeah, fair enough. Sounds like it's rough over there.
Yeah. So why I was involved in the creation of this thing called the Jon Snow Memorandum is because in Massachusetts, in Boston, I think around May or June, a group of like 9,000 scientists and doctors came together and started something called the Great Barrington Declaration. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I haven't. No, please illuminate me.
So the Great Barrington Declaration was, oh my God, it's this document that they got like 9 to 10,000 plus doctors and scientists to sign up for, that basically perpetrates the idea that our country needs to just completely remove lockdown. We need to allow herd immunity to take its course. It'll be fine because we somehow will be able to have the government take all the people at risk and put them in a separate living facility. Which, you know, if you've ever tried to get your grandma or something to move anywhere, it's impossible.
Yep.
Right. So they're basically saying, hey, you know, a lockdown does more harm than good. So it's deteriorating people's mental health. So we especially have to completely remove the lockdown and just let herd immunity take its course.
Talking point for a while. I was like, as if you care, the posturing coming out of you now. Yeah, for the first time you care about mental health. Oh, neat. When it affects the stonks, you say.
Well, not even realizing that the significant, you know, exponential decrease in the quality of mental health of Americans is because we haven't even had a full lockdown ever anywhere, by the way. But it's because during this whole time when people have been asked to be locked down, right, they've gotten $1,200 for 10 months. Right? They conveniently leave that out of their declaration, right?
Like, how do you survive?
That people have been becoming unemployed. Small businesses, like where I am, a good 40% of them in the whole city have closed. Right? Of course, people's mental health is going to be shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And, you know, because like doctors and scientists are so out of touch with reality a lot of the times, a lot of them come from like, I'm like a part of the 1% that doesn't come from like, you know, an extremely high income background.
Okay.
When you make those arguments, right, that, hey, you know, people's mental health are being affected by the lockdown, people who are out of touch with like things like why people need stimulus agree with that. That's why it's gotten like 9,000 signatures. So a group of scientists and doctors consequently after that, including me, we made something called the Jon Snow Memorandum, which basically counters everything that they say. Because now we need to show everyone, the whole entire world, how divided, right, doctors and scientists are, because that's fucking great.
Well,
right?
yeah. Okay. First off, can I ask one quick question before I forget? How many people did you get for yours?
15,000 plus.
Nice. Oh, good. Because that's the only thing they respect is strength and numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's really good to hear. But I like there's so many different people, like it's not just Trump, but there's been a lot of people, even in Canada and Europe as well, who will tout these absolute quacks. Like absolute quacks to the point where like some of them it's easy for me to do cursory like, you know, Googling and I'll find out this is not a true doctorate. They got it from the University of whatever, right? But some of them who are like actual doctors, that they do have doctorates in medicine and stuff like that, who are still espousing ideas that I know aren't based in medical science. So like there's no shortage of them, I suppose, if you need them, right? To find the doctor who will endorse your wacky beliefs.
Well, yeah, one of the big problems too is I mean, a good 1/4 of the doctors I work with have been advocating for herd immunity too.
Why?
A lot of them, because they actually believe in it.
But like I'm not a scientist. I'm a clown on the internet. But I did enough, like, you know, I don't know, my own research to realize that's just going to result in mass death. Like,
Yeah, it'll result in 4 million people dying for the small chance of herd immunity happening, when in the whole entire history of the human race, we've never had herd immunity without a vaccine.
see, that
Right?
that last part is the part that's often left out. That's kind of crucial. I don't know. Like,
The problem with this politicization of the virus is exactly that: is you have doctors and nurses and healthcare workers signing on board with misinformation, because signing on board with that side, right, validates all the other political beliefs that they have. Right.
How like, do these people, do they genuinely believe what they're not the ones who believe in herd immunity? That one's kind of like, that one sounds a little more normal compared to some of the other people, like the demon semen doctor, for example, the president was touting, or other doctors of that nature who were touting things that, like you said, hydroxychloroquine. Like the fact that someone like me, like, a Philistine, can pronounce it or even knows what that is.
We can blame France for that one.
Okay. Yeah, merci.
This doctor called Dr. Raoul brought hydroxychloroquine to France. I mean, to America from France.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I've worked with doctors that trust Trump even over their own knowledge that they were pushing hydroxychloroquine.
Wow. Do you think genuinely that all those people were taking it? Like when Sebastian Gorka was like, I take it every morning now. I was like, really? Because doesn't it make your heart explode?
Yeah, you can't take that every morning.
Okay. All right, good to know. All right, I thought so. I was like, he's lying. I know he's lying. His heart's still there. I would see a lack of heart if this was the case. Okay,
yeah.
Good to know. Okay, so obviously that stuff is all horrifying. What are your thoughts on the vaccine and the rollout of it so far?
So TLDR, and I'll go into it after. Vaccine, good. Rollout, bad.
Okay.
Rollout, not just bad, but extremely fucking horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
The CDC this time for the rollout actually had a really amazing plan. So they had like, hey, we're in phase 1, we're going to give it to frontline healthcare essential workers, as well as workers and residents of nursing homes. And phase 2, we'll give it, to people 77 and up, as well as all other essential workers that are not in healthcare. Phase 3 will give it to people with chronic illnesses, right, comorbidities, high risk, as well as people 55 and up. Phase 4 will be everyone else. That's an amazing fucking plan. That plan's good. In terms of the execution, in our country for the past month, we've only given out 1 million vaccines. I predict phase 1 will last for like 4 or 5 months, because there's been almost no rollout of vaccines, and when there has been rollout, right, a lot of the hospital administration, have been coming up and taking them instead, right?
Okay, I was going to ask why. What's the holdup? And it's,
well, the holdup is in our whole entire country, we've only disseminated through hospitals around 3 million doses, even though we have a contract with Pfizer for about like 20 million doses. They want to do the rollout in waves for some reason. So the first wave will be 6 million doses, which will cover only 3 million people because it's a double dose.
mm-hmm.
So they've been spreading that 3 million out across the whole entire country.
And like, from what I've seen also, it seems like politicians are getting it. Marco Rubio's gotten it. Celebrities are getting it as well.
Yeah, the whole entire NFL have gotten it before we have.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry, they're essential workers, right?
but do you kneel? That's the question. Because so as to be expected, no surprise here. It's the super rich who are getting it first, as are the super rich countries.
Yeah, I mean, I've personally even gotten emails from, like VIP, we call them VIP patients,
mm-hmm.
In our health system, offering upwards of like $400,000 just to slip them a dose.
Wow.
Just to slip them one dose of the vaccine.
And do they get it? Is that enough?
No, I mean, well, one dose is not enough.
No, not one dose, but it's 400. Is that the price? Is that the, like, the black
Well, that's
market?
what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I have no price, right?
Okay.
There's no price you can give me,
mm-hmm.
but I'm wondering, as soon as one doctor, takes that offer,
oh yeah,
the doctors across the whole nation. It'll be like a rippling effect, right?
Absolutely. Well, hey, a $400K paycheck. I mean, that's basically your entire tuition, and you can start to rationalize it too, right? You could be like, well, Biden's not going to forgive student debt, so I guess I got to forgive it myself. And what's two little doses at the end of the day, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, believe it or not, some doctors get into the field because they have a high level of integrity, right, and belief in what they're doing.
I know. Well, I mean, that's basically what it sounds like. All my friends who are nurses, they're all just like the most genuinely caring people. Like, they're not nurses for the paychecks. They're not nurses for any reason other than they actually want to help people, and it's like their calling. So, I think that's the first piece of good news you've told me so far, Doc Midnight. I didn't know this was going to be Doomer Midnight. My word.
Chats are Doomer Midnight. Don't worry. You should have seen my chat with Lucid Fox this morning.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was nothing happy about that.
Well, okay. Well, in terms of the vaccine, you said vaccine good, rollout bad. The rollout, though, eventually will reach within the next year and a half the majority of Americans. Is that kind of the idea?
I don't predict phase 1 being over until 7 months from now.
Wow.
With the way that the rollout's going.
And there's no desire, because like everyone who's pushing for the reopening, the stock market must go up, jobs must continue, everything must go back to normal, we must have brunch. That there's not a concerted effort to be like, well, the answer to that would be the vaccination, the mass vaccination of the country, wouldn't it?
Well, that's the problem, right? In our country, every state has basically become its own country doing its own thing. And the most like asinine thing that has been done around the world, not just in this country, are tiered lockdowns, right? Or, hey, if we reach this number of cases, let's open up one part of our economy of our state, right?
Yeah.
And, oh, wait, I didn't know that all of a sudden, as we open up, more and more people will get COVID. So then we have to close down again, right?
Surprise.
Like, it makes no sense to me. It really doesn't.
So then what like what is the answer in terms like, is if the vaccine is not the end, is are we just basically like, the honest truth, I guess, is just that there's just going to be immeasurable suffering and death up until the point where they finally can get through those other phases.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm building my own bunker underground. I'm going to use Twitch money to buy the materials to build an underground bunker.
I mean, good luck. I think Hassan might be the only one who actually makes bunker money on Twitch. People, by the way,
when we're all dead, you guys are next in Canada.
True. I told everyone, by the way, they could ask questions during this, but I've kind of been preoccupied with the doomer of it all. Do you mind if I ask a few of them as they come in?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. There's been a lot of questions about the UK variant, obviously. Can you ask him to explain the more infectious variant that only has anecdotes about how it is more infectious?
Oh, looks like someone listened to my talk with Lucid today.
Hey.
Because this is something I've said word for word. Okay. Yeah, might be the only good news I have. So despite the media sort of perpetrating the UK vaccine, not UK vaccine, the UK variant as like, oh, this new scary variant, everyone's fucked, right? It's not actually a new variant. All of the mutations within the UK variant we have seen before, starting in June and July. I mean, it's the only new thing about the UK variant is that it's a combination of a few mutations, most notably the like N439K mutation and the N501Y mutation. Only one of those mutations are even within the binding region of the spike protein for this virus. So scientifically, we have a high level of confidence that this will have nothing to do with vaccine efficacy. This will not change vaccine efficacy at all. Of course, we are very closely following this variant, especially because this variant has now made its way to Colorado. in the US. But yeah, the vaccines, the mRNA vaccines create antibodies that are like highly adaptable. There's no cause of concern for this particular variant that we have, even though we are currently researching it.
Okay.
However, I would like to reiterate, we are currently researching it. In regards to the massive amounts, like 70% increase in infectivity, we are also researching that as well. Right now, as we can, all we can say is that 70% increase in, infectivity of the virus is a little bit anecdotal, and the paper that touts that 70% has not been peer reviewed yet. And if you look at the paper, you will see in big bold letters that it has not been peer reviewed. So yeah, more news to come. We are closely following this in the scientific and medical community. That's sort of the most I can say.
People have been asking what state you live in. I just didn't want to ask it at first. I didn't know if that was part of the doxing or if you reveal that information.
Yeah, I don't reveal that.
All right. The other question, can you ask the doc to explain the role aerosolized particles play? I listened to the Sid Rap podcast, and they seem to stress it's the primary way it spreads.
Yep, that's true. Aerosolized particles are the primary way it spreads. What aerosolized particles are is, anytime you're speaking or sneezing or anytime literally your mouth opens, particles, from your body come out of your mouth. In indoor settings, right, these aerosolized particles can even stay within the air for a couple of hours, like 2 to 3 hours, even after you leave. Which is why, they're limiting, they asked everyone to limit indoor gatherings, to socially distance, to wear masks, even indoors, even outdoors. You can have the viral particles remain, albeit to like a significantly lesser extent. But yeah, I mean, the virus is spread by speaking to each other. So that's why masks are essential. That's why social distancing is essential, because social distancing without masks, masks without social distancing, also doesn't really do much. Like if you're within like kissing distance, right, of someone and you're both wearing masks, you can still have respiratory particles go through your mask, right? Unless you're wearing N95s, which, not everyone. Yeah.
But I mean, the big thing and what I try to tell people is that the idea of the masks is more that you're going to spread it to others than you are going to be protected from anything, right?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of self-protection, but for the most part, yes, it's like completely protecting others from your own germs, right? And this is an idea even before COVID in Asian countries. This is the idea too, right? In Asian countries, whenever you're sick or whenever you're not feeling well, you wear a mask to protect other people from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know the concept's really hard to explain to people. They're like, in Japan, they all wear masks and stuff. I was like, they're being polite. It's a courtesy thing.
Yeah, right. Like, since when did we not care anymore about our fellow Americans or our fellow people? Right. It's now about our own personal freedom rather than, the freedom for other people to choose not to get sick. Yeah.
Someone wants to ask, what do you think, what's the viability of a European style healthcare system could be implemented during this COVID period?
I don't think any aspects of any other healthcare system can currently be implemented until COVID's sort of over.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of Medicare for all, because of how ingrained into our society the current system of healthcare is, Medicare for all sort of needs to be done like very meticulously, or else it'll completely fail. Mm-hmm. It sort of needs to start out as an expansion of the wow, I'm brain farting. Expansion of like it starts with a P option. I'm brain farting. I'm sorry.
No worries at all.
Public option. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It needs to start out as an expansion of the public option, and funds need to be reallocated from military spending to make the public option more appealing than private insurance. And then eventually private insurance will be completely phased out because people will choose a public option that's free right over the private insurance, especially if the public option is better. Mm-hmm. That's sort of how in our just capitalistic country, sort of with the healthcare system controlled by the pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies, in my opinion, that's the only way we're going to push that system out.
Is there more literature now on reinfections? Is the probability of reinfections something we should be concerned about, or is it a rarity?
Oh yeah. Bad news again. Since October, anecdotally, I've had an extremely significant amount of people coming back to the ICU getting reinfected from COVID after we did the whole like party that they left the ICU. Hey, you survived COVID type of thing. A few of those patients have died. Worldwide, we are seeing increasing incidences of reinfection. So yes, is it something people should be concerned about? Yeah. It seems to indicate that the immunity that you get from simply just getting the virus is not very long lasting.
Can you ask if his hospital brought in an industrial HEPA filter, because they only cost about $2,000 to $5,000?
In what context?
I'm not sure. That's the question is in its entirety. I assume it's just like, did your hospital buy this because it'll make it less infectious inside?
So the hospital I work at is rich enough to where that wasn't an issue.
Okay.
I mean, that goes into a whole nother thing where the storage requirements of the Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca vaccine pretty much indicate their accessibility as well, because you have to be a pretty huge hospital to be able to store something at -70 degrees, which the Pfizer vaccine has to be stored at. The Moderna vaccine, and this is Celsius, by the way, the Moderna vaccine has to be stored at -20 degrees Celsius, which is a little less stringent requirements. But basically, this means that a lot of rural communities, which coincidentally have very high incidences of COVID, some of them, not all of them, will not be able to have access through their hospitals to getting the Pfizer vaccine, because their hospitals, the one hospital, right, in the 100-mile radius, will not be able to store it.
Does he think it will become an endemic illness?
This is something I know that people have been asking me because the CDC has said that. I mean, I can only hope, right? Because the idea behind if it becomes an endemic illness means that we can predict the mutations enough, right? And be able to adjust the mutations quickly enough to manufacture a vaccine for each time the coronavirus mutates, right? Right now, we can't do that.
But
we have no way.
Fortunate enough that there has been significant mutations, right? Outside of the initial 3, I think.
Yeah, and when we first encountered COVID, we've been fortunate enough to be able to quickly sequence the whole entire genome of the virus, as well as to be able to use strategies that we implemented unsuccessfully for HIV 30 plus years ago.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So like this mRNA idea isn't like, we didn't like pull it out of our ass, right?
Yeah.
It's been in the making like 40 plus years. It's just that in the past, especially most notably when it's been used for HIV, it's been extremely unsuccessful. We're just lucky that, hey, when we were grasping at straws, trying everything we could, we were lucky that, hey, one person decided, hey, let's try this, see if it works. And it did.
This is a question that it's a question that I thought, but I feel I've been too embarrassed to ask someone. Could you please ask him to explain how COVID disease doesn't build long immunity, but the vaccine does?
So COVID disease, so it's sort of inaccurate to say it completely doesn't build long-term.
Well, it's the idea that your body recognizes it, right? When it experiences it again.
Yeah. So, in terms of the vaccine, it's like, it sort of exposes your body to a much higher incidence of the particular protein that the virus uses to function, right? So if you're exposing your body, and to a certain extent, it's not even exposing, your body is literally creating the protein to a high amount that the virus uses. And especially when you can control, which we can, yay science, right? We can control what cells particularly take up this mRNA. And they're antigen presenting cells that take up this mRNA. You'll be able to have much more durable and long-term immune response if you're able to control certain aspects of immunity that way, if that makes sense. I mean, I can go through like a whole entire explanation.
And that's what the vaccine does, as
Exactly, right.
opposed to your body's just natural ability to recognize it.
Yeah, yeah, because it basically does the same thing as when it's in your body, just to an extremely much more higher level extent. If that makes sense. It's a much more directed response. It's a much stronger response. It's a response with much more ability to create memory B cells and T cells.
If it isn't something that you think is going to be endemic, or if it could be endemic, do you think because of how rapid we were able to throw together the current vaccine, and I know that happened in large part due to it was kind of like a puzzle piece, like you'd already had a lot of the elements in place ready to go. Do you think there's a possibility that would still be able to be handled through that mechanism, or do you think that it would be like the flu, where every year it's like, well, take your guessing game COVID shot as well as your flu shot?
I mean, I can only hope it'll be the former. I can say that.
Me too. Me too, Doc.
I can only say that if the mutations increase to a much more significant extent within the spike protein, we might sort of be fucked. We might have to go back to the drawing board.
Wow. From your perspective in the medical profession, has this been enough, do you think, to rattle the cages to the point where people realize that it's the actual system itself and not just this disease that came along that is utterly fucked?
No, because the propaganda is strong by our systems and it works, right? A lot of people, and for some reason, like disproportionately so, a lot of nurses, more so than doctors, I have no idea why, are very happy with being called heroes and getting a pat on the back. Right, they're very happy with the pizza parties. They're very happy with the, hey, you work so hard. Thank you so much. Right, to like disguise what's actually going on and how unsupported you are. I don't think enough.
That's enough. Like that's.
I think for a lot of people that's enough, and I think we need more and more. I think the problem is, Lance, it's like our lifestyle has sort of been normalized. Even before COVID, like, but
the extremities you explained to me, the suicides, the drug abuse, the death, like that hasn't changed.
They think it's normal.
Wow.
I'm the only one capable of not thinking it's normal because I'm new to the field, essentially. Like I'm not disillusioned, and I haven't worked there for so long that I'm not able to like distinguish, right, like what's supposed to be normal. But a lot of the people I've worked with that have been there 20 plus years already, they don't really care. Like they think this is the normal, and that's always how it is, and that's always how it will be, and there's no point trying to make a change because that's just how the field is. Right.
So when you say the best way to help you is for other frontline workers to organize and to unionize because you guys aren't privileged enough to do so, that's going to be a very difficult obstacle to climb as well. Like if this isn't shaking everyone aware, it almost leads me to believe like what can.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing is this is one of the first times actually that sort of the rigors of the healthcare system as a whole are being put into the public eye, and people are able to like doctors are able to hear from other people like, hey, this is not normal. Your life is fucking crazy. Right. I mean, yeah, go on.
Well, I was going to say, is that just the way a lot of the healthcare professionals have thought? They're like, well, yeah, I mean, everybody takes a bunch of caffeine pills to be able to work 24 hours a day to be able to make a small amount of money. That's just the way.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it doesn't help, right, that like doctor TV shows and movies and stuff sort of validate this idea that it's normal. Right. Like I mean, even the most minute thing, right? Like, let's say you eliminated lunch break for every aspect of the workforce in the whole U.S. People will be up in arms.
Yeah.
But we don't have lunch break. We've never had a lunch break. It's normalized for us that lunch break is not a thing.
When do you eat?
Right. I personally, I don't eat while I'm at work. I just eat when I get home.
Wow.
Some people find time to like eat in the bathroom or like at their desk intermittently between.
I gotta be honest. You should have a bigger beef with TV producers and movie producers who have sold everyone the lies of the medical profession. Because while I don't think that it's House, okay, I've never thought that it's like, you know, Doogie Howser-esque. Like it's like, oh, it's just all fun and escapades and, you know, unprotected sex and all this stuff that happens behind the scenes. I've definitely never thought that it's as bleak and grim as you've like awoken me to in the past hour, where I'm like, holy shit, like y'all are treated as shitty as everyone else, if not worse, because right now you're all dying from this.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not just that we're dying, right? A lot of what happened also in the past 10 months are a lot of the workers, a lot of my coworkers that have gotten COVID, that have gotten sick, have been let go for being sick for too long, for going over their sick days from having COVID. So then people are also afraid of their jobs. So of course, when they have a self-symptom check, even if they have COVID, they report that they don't.
Yeah, of course. So you can keep working.
A good 20% of my office a good 20% of the people I work with in the ICU have been working as COVID positive patients for the past 4 months.
Do you feel sometimes
right? Like,
you're screaming into a void because no one else at your job like recognizes any of this?
Yeah, and that's why I came on Twitch.
Okay. Well, that makes me happy at least.
Because now it's a void where I can have some semblance of validation and people can understand what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Was there any other huge whistleblower secrets that I failed to learn in this?
Yeah, I mean, one big one is the fact that people keep saying, "Hey, like the data being reported is inaccurate," which is true. It's unfortunately the case that it's inaccurate because it's underreported, not because it's overreported.
I was just about to guess that. I was like, I bet you the numbers are even worse than the ones that are shown.
Oh yeah, we as a medical community, we think the amount of deaths are about like 400,000.
Wow.
Right now.
Wow. So almost half.
And yeah, and I'm so glad right now that things have been coming to light, like what happened in Florida, where that like Florida data scientist woman, right, was like publicly open with like, you know, being approached by the governor to
but she's getting death threats and stuff like that as well.
Yeah. I mean, and she got even if she didn't get death threats, right? How does it feel to get your house raided by the DA and Secret Service and all of your shit taken?
No shit.
Right?
No shit. Yeah.
And unfortunately, all I can say, unfortunately, is that Florida is not the only state where the state representatives have approached hospitals and scientists and doctors to fudge the numbers so that they can resume
but like the thing I kept thinking to myself, and I was proven wrong on this, was there was going to be a breaking point. Well, maybe I wasn't proven entirely wrong, because I think the election of Joe Biden was a protest election more than it was anyone was genuinely excited for Joe Biden. But yeah, at some point, if this keeps going the way it's going, you're going to reach this zenith where like enough Americans will know someone who either died or direct or friend of a friend or something. And that happened. Now we've got the 1 in 1,000 number, right? Yeah. So I was like, there's got to be a breaking point where it's just like people, it doesn't matter how much propaganda they're fed. It doesn't matter how much OWN or Breitbart or Fox News they're given on a daily basis. It's like, that doesn't matter to me anymore. Like my mom just died from the fake disease you keep telling me is fake, that I shouldn't wear a mask for.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is there has been a breaking point, but the enemy that we picked is the wrong enemy. We chose China as the enemy, right? Instead of the virus.
Well, you didn't choose.
Right? We've unified
it was chosen for you, all right? They did a very good job of weaponizing that. Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do when you have the whole entire country now unify against the completely wrong thing?
It's just so it does, like I laugh when you're gonna cry, because the whole thing is basically like, yeah, no, China did this. They made it in a lab to basically upend all of society and the global economy for the benefit of something ... Like we haven't figured that part out, but they did it. Like, they did it.
For the benefit of killing a couple million, right?
Yeah.
Was it even a couple million of their own people?
Yeah, no, yeah, but yeah, just because of schemes, of course. Yeah. Man, Doc. How do you smile? How do you sound remotely jolly? This is absolutely horrifying.
If I don't smile, I just mauled and cry.
Okay.
That's why. I mean, I already spent a significant amount of time at work crying in the bathroom, so I figured while I'm at Twitch, I can at least, be happy or
play some games. I don't know.
Yeah.
Outside of the first part you told me, which was very crucial and something I hadn't thought of, about how obviously frontline workers need to unionize and/or what are your thoughts on a general strike? I've been feeling the undercurrent of that, and I want to see maybe the idea of that grow, or maybe even the fire of it grow.
What do you mean by a general strike?
Well, the idea is that there is a lot of things at this point, like you and me have been pointing out some of the gross inequities that are being basically thrust forward upon the Americans, and globally as well. By the way, this is not a uniquely American thing. I mean, Indigenous people in Canada are dying at much higher rates, surprise, than the white population of the country. But the idea being that there's a lot of things that there's no other crucial time for things like, I mean, climate change. We need a Green New Deal. The window's very, very short on that. Medicare for all. People are literally dying if they don't have access to healthcare in the United States, right? The time is kind of nigh. The time is kind of now, it seems. And the best way to get politicians to listen, as even someone like Joe Biden, who's now kind of trying to sell himself as a progressive, is through things like striking, direct action. And do you think that, to me, it feels like that this is an infectious idea? However, it also seems like the way you're selling it to me is that people have become so conditioned, even in amongst your workforce, where things are becoming horrifying and bad, to just accept it. To just be like, well, yeah, this is, I didn't think it could get worse, but it did. But, pizza. We got that pizza, so. Yeah,
part of the acceptance, insurmountably so, is the successful propaganda by our administration, right? We didn't just get pizza, we got backpacks and jackets with our names on them. People were happy. I almost feel like me and the other residents and all the younger people that have just got into the field are we're gaslighted, and we think we're crazy to think that what we go through every day is crazy. Wow. Right? I mean, the impact in my city alone, if let's say the whole entire sort of all the public transportation workers and all those supermarket workers striked on our behalf, that would be an amazing impact. It would probably honestly lead to our administration doing something.
Absolutely.
And because the whole other parts of our city would completely stop.
And they won't, the thing is, I've said this before, government doesn't listen to silence, they listen to noise. And then there's no question. And I think it's also totally, I've never thought about this before speaking to you, that you guys aren't in a position to do that. You can't ever take that risk. And that's totally valid, as it should be. Can we send you blankets or something too? I mean, it sounds so very dark, Doc.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all we can. I think that is the solution, right? We need to spread the word that other people need to speak on our behalf, right? I mean, even with the thing going on right now with Tim Pool and the thing he tweeted, right?
Yeah, Jesus. about how y'all are dancing on the graves or some other ghoulish nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, we even need other people to speak on our behalf for that, right? because sentiment like that has completely removed our ability to speak up for ourselves as well.
Absolutely.
Within the online space as well as in the political,
arena.
Yeah.
Before I get you to promote yourself, I just want to say, thank you, genuinely. And I don't mean like in a soldiery way, like thank you for your service, but like thanks for having the bravery to tell everyone all of this, because I would be woefully in the dark to a lot of this, and I am very in tune with like leftist media and news. Like I gobble it up daily. It's part of my job. And you never hear about how horrifying things are for doctors and nurses outside of your heroes and the applause and stuff like that. So genuinely thank you.
Thank you for giving me a platform that's definitely larger than mine to be able to share this information.
Yeah, do you want to plug all your stuff, Doc?
Yeah, so I'm DocMidnight. I started on Twitch as a whistleblower. I've been a COVID doctor since March, as well as a clinical researcher and scientist. And after COVID is over, which I hope it will be, if not soon, maybe 2-3 years from now, I hope to stay on Twitch to be Twitch's like doctor and medical educator to bridge the gap between the growing public distrust of science and medicine, and to be able for people to have a doctor and a scientist that's also a huge nerd that they can also relate to and ask any sort of questions.
That's incredible. And well, also one who's deeply interested in, I don't know, furthering and helping out his coworkers, because there is another. I think there's a psychiatrist on Twitch who's really famous. But
Dr. K.
That's it. Yeah, but outside of that, I don't know of anyone else. It's a pretty empty field.
And one big announcement is also once COVID is over, I will be leaving the medical field and I will be revealing myself on Twitch, because I will also be running for a local office.
Okay. All right.
And
amazing.
Hopefully eventually federal office.
Even more incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, I guess is this the first time you've revealed that, or did you say that every time?
No. The past 2 days have been the first times I revealed it. Yep.
Oh, so you're saying it's an exclusive. It's an exclusive, everyone.
Yeah.
Heard it here first. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, Doc. Thank you again. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for just doing what you do, because it's harrowing, to say the very least.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on. And one thing I do with like Lucid and Chud Logic is like I sort of let them know if there's like any new misinformation or any updates I would have, and then we just do a little chat if that works for you in terms of
done and done.
What lies around the corner? Never knowing who's going to kill you. Are you the next one to be murked? You never know if it's a friend or a foe. If you want to see the biggest names in BreadTube and Left Twitch and Butterthing, and I don't know the fucking names anymore, come see Left Among Us.
If you want us to advertise your channel or work, please go to weareserfs.com and email us a 20 to 30 second ad, and we'll take it on to the end of one of our videos to help promote your leftist channel or progressive something. Whatever you do.
To our God, I'm Rast, Xander Corvus, and Schlatsky, we shall commit blood sacrifices in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, our lives are yours to command. To our lords, Jeffrey Lamb, Trevor R., Stephen, Hans Josephine, Poppy Nelson, Ryan Lubin, Jimothy K. Meeblebeeps Jr., we bow meekly for your pleasure. To our knights of the round table, Josh Mickelson, Dylan Bythe, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, Todd Lajeunesse, Political Puppy, Jimmy Bignuts, Andreas Chitoro, Good Poon Hates Cops, That's Solid Poon Then, Dr. Zayas, Yoppie, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Jack Darko, Thomas Barretton, J. Fraser Cartwright, Goofalankius, Melissa Murphy, Nicholas Marks, Alexander Thaler, Ali Reda Jaffer, Alex Gauvin, Radical Maniac, we salute you.